Good evening. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to News in Focus. My name is First. I would like to thank you for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, TV channel 347. Now, last week, Tuesday, Jordan's King Abdullah II and US President Donald Trump had a meeting in what seemed to be a tense anticipation of what will come next for the Gaza Strip. At stake was Trump's suggestions that the United States, quote unquote, take over the enclave and expel Palestinians to Egypt and Jordan. This now brings to question the growing amount of refugees that are in both parts of the neighbors to Palestine. Joining me now from Amman, I'd like to welcome Dr. Dima Tahboub, who is from an organization called Islamic Action Front, and she's also a member of parliament in the Jordanian national legislature. Dr. Tahboub, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, thank you, and this is my first time with Hilaal. I hope you all the best. Thank you.
No, shukran, it's an absolute pleasure.
Having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Dr. Tahboub, just listening to Donald Trump's rhetoric last week, listening to, of course, his meeting he had with King Abdullah II, was there any surprise in the fact that he's seeking this interest of a complete takeover of Gaza?
Well, this is not our first experience with Trump here in Jordan, because this is the second term for Trump, and we have experienced him in his first term in the presidency of the United States. And at that time, he also forwarded a more ridiculous, actually, plan for the region and for Palestine, known as the deal of the century. This is why we did not take it as something very surprising, but even, escalating in ridicule, actually, because we already had the experience with President Trump in his first term. So this comes even as a further escalation to the ridicule that he presented in his first term, known as the deal of the century. He's taking things to the far extreme, actually, and trying to pose all this to normalize the people in the region, all the involved countries and people with Palestine. He's trying to go to the far extreme in order to normalize people to accept what he's saying, and at least, if not accept the whole deal, at least, try to bargain within the terms he is promoting and he's forwarding. So even in the first term, when the deal of the century was posed to the world, Jordan was firm in its rejection. The king, King Abdullah, has a very well-known saying, saying that we stand firm with our three no's. No for the forced displacement of the Palestinians, no for the alternative country in Jordan, and we stand firm also in our support of Jerusalem and the unified Jerusalem and the custodianship of Jordan on the holy sites in Jerusalem. So there's nothing new to us except that we see this as a further ridiculous escalation that has no ground, in the area. And our rejection is as firm as it used to be in the first Trumpian term and with the first deal. This is a position that Jordan holds when it comes to the king, when it comes to the to the parliament, and when it comes to the people. And this has been voiced loud and clear by the Jordanian people in the reception of the king when he came back from the United States, that we are very firm in our rejection of all the Trumpian deal that to empty Gaza from its people. And further, even, as Jordanian people, we go ahead in supporting the resistance as the only way of achieving a free Palestine.
Dr. Tahboub, for the viewers out there, and I'd like to think everyone has not been living under a rock, why is there a push, especially from the right wing of the Israeli Knesset, and now many within the cabinet of Donald Trump, to push these refugees away from Gaza and make it what many are now terming it Jordan and Egypt's problem?
I think with these American suggestions and plan, the far right in Israel is trying to achieve through policy and diplomacy what they did not achieve, in their military campaign. So they saw that they did not achieve what they wanted in war, and that the Gazan people stood firm and fast and steadfast in the country, and they refused to leave Gaza. So now they're trying through this diplomacy, American diplomacy, and they're trying to bring the Arabs, the Arab countries, to support this deal to achieve what they think will, clear their heads from Gaza and from facing the resistance. But, we in Jordan, and we're trying also to form an alliance, because part of what King Abdullah said in the meeting is that this is not only a Jordanian issue, this is also an Arab issue, and there's going to be a summit that will bring Palestine and the Palestinian issue to its Arab arena, and the decision of the Arabs will be unanimous. And until now, we have also heard from Egypt, and we've also heard from Saudi Arabia that they also reject the idea or the plan of forced displacement of, the people of Gaza, either to Jordan or to Egypt. This has found a rejection, a formal rejection from the Arab countries that are most involved in this issue. So until now, there has been no change on our position here in Jordan. We grew firmer in, insisting that we support the steadfastness of the people in Gaza, that Palestine is going to be for the Palestinians and the Jordan is going to be for the Jordanians. There's no place, there's no way to accept, the plans of forced displacement of the Gazans into Jordan. And although there has been pressures from the American administration, from Trump on Jordan, economic pressure. They tried to exert economic pressure upon Jordan, but until now, our position is steadfast and firm in rejecting all these American provocations and all these American plans.
Dr. Tahboub, you listen to the words that are coming out of Donald Trump, and you see his meetings, whether it's with obviously King Abdullah II or even Benjamin Netanyahu, and one can't help but notice that this is even more attempts to completely ethnically cleanse the residents of Gaza. How much is this justified more that what we are seeing right now is equivalent to a complete ethnic cleansing of the residents of Gaza?
Of course, this is not the only step that they executed when it comes to ethnic cleansing, because the United States was fully supporting the Zionists in their war, in their ethnic cleansing, in their genocide, supporting them militarily, economically. So they're continuing with what they started. This is not a surprise. They're just continuing in the field of politics and diplomacy what they started as a military assistance and military full support. This is why we even, I, as a Jordanian parliament, suggested in the parliament that we also should take the United States to the ICJ, to the International Criminal Court, because they take part and they share and participate in the genocide. And now, that Trump is trying also to criminalize the court because they think that they are benefiting the Palestinians against the Israelis. So we see this full support. We have seen it during the war on Gaza, and this is a continuation of what they have started already in their support for Israel. So nothing has changed, unfortunately. And to us, this is absolutely a support of genocide and the support of ethnic cleansing. This is why, for example, in Jordan, as an Islamic party, we are now boycotting everything that relates to American policy, because we see that they are participants in this genocide. Even, if you want to, let's speak about the body language of our king in that meeting. Sure. There was absolute anger. There was absolute dismay. We are used to the body language and the features of our kings in, meetings with the people. He is very calm. He is very kind. You can see, how he treats people, his smile, his composition. We saw that there's an absence of all the features that we are used to when it comes to King Abdullah. And we saw an absolute dismay and anger by the king and by the crown prince. This is why even, King Abdullah insisted that after the meeting finished, he published on X what he stressed during the closed meeting, that we stood firm by our position of rejecting all when it comes to the forced displacement of the Gazans and the forced expulsion of the Gazans from Gaza.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Dr. Dima Tahboub, coming to us from Amman in Jordan. We continue this conversation with regards to Donald Trump's idea of wanting to, quote unquote, take over Gaza. To stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with Dr. Dima Tahboub, I beg your pardon, who is a member of the Jordanian parliament. Shukran so much for staying with us, Dr. Tahboub. The Zionist lobby, like for example AIPAC, have really, along with the Republican Party and Donald Trump, of course, included, have sold this idea that the Gazans can live in peace, and I'm going to say quote unquote, can live in peace, but only under these conditions that Trump is implementing. Now, I mean, how much of a concern is that, given that we have the Gazans who have been displaced, everything of theirs has been destroyed, and now all of a sudden they are forced to live under conditions that a Western power now has to go ahead and implement for them. These are really concerning times, isn't it, given that they really don't have much to hold on to except their spirit, except their resistance, and except their belief that they will hold on to their land no matter what?
Well, as a South African TV and with a South African experience, you should know that this is very, very much and very enough. Because during 1 year and 3 months of war, this is what they held to, and this is what made them steadfast in their country and in their city. With everything they lost their families, their houses, the infrastructure, they lost their money, but they still stood on in their land and in their countries. And we saw the migration that they did to the north after the ceasefire. This tells you that the north was totally destroyed, but they still insisted on going back. And they gave us this scene of, unanimous migration back to the north. And this is a very clear message that even if the north is destroyed, even if our houses are also destroyed, we're still going back. You can hear the messages all through from the people in Gaza. We're going to rebuild it. There's no going out of Gaza except for paradise. So Gaza, this is not the first attempt actually to force people out of Gaza. We know, through history that there has been an attempt in the 50s and it failed. And we know the deal of the century also proposed by Trump failed. And this deal of emptying people, emptying Gaza from its people will also fail. It will fail by the resistance of the people and their sumud and their steadfastness on their land. And we see that also the spirits are very high. We see also the diplomacy of the resistance in showing all the morality and all, let's say, the principles they have in the way that they are giving back the prisoners, the Israeli prisoners. We can see that they're approaching the world in very diplomatic messages. Now the ball is also in the arena of the Arabic countries. They have to also support all this, Gazan steadfastness. They have to support it with a firm position to reject once and for all these American deals of freeing Gaza. Now, the only solution that has to be put to the table is the idea of rebuilding Gaza, rebuilding the infrastructure, rebuilding its medical services, rebuilding its educational services. This is the only solution and the only proposal that should be put to the table. If the American administration see that this is also the firm position of the Arab countries, I think, like the deal of the century has failed, this also Trumpian deal will also fail.
Dr. Tahboub, you mentioned, of course, many of the Arabic countries. I want to touch on closer to the Rafah border, and that's Egypt. When you speak to Palestinians, and of course we've got quite a lot of the diaspora here in South Africa, when I've spoken to many others online during interviews, they have a lack of trust towards Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the current Egyptian Prime Minister, as opposed to, of course, his predecessor, Mohamed Morsi, where there was more trust towards Mohamed Morsi. Do Palestinians have any hope that Sisi and this current Egyptian cabinet will actually reject Trump's plans for Egypt to take Palestinian refugees?
As I told you, part of the solution would be for the Arab countries to stand in a firm position, because they will be affected. They know that they will be affected. Jordan knows it will be affected. Egypt knows that. All the Arab countries know that. So part of, let's say, safekeeping their own countries and also responding to the will of their peoples is also to support the steadfastness of the people of Gaza. So this should be also a local priority to each of the Arab countries involved, and it should be a local responsibility to support them, because in this way, they will be also safeguarding the national security of their own countries, and they will be also responding positively to the requests of their people. But also, if in any way this happens, the Gazans are the masters of their land, okay? If they choose not to leave, nothing, if they choose to die on their land, nothing will force them out of this position. So they are the masters of the land. They have the final say on their land. Even if the Arab countries do not do their role and they do not shoulder their responsibilities towards the Gazans, the people of Gaza have the first and final say. The more steadfast they are in their country, the more that they will fail all the attempts, against them in, cleansing them and in emptying Gaza from its people. So they have the final say, but the Arabs should know that if Gaza falls, then we know that the strategic plan of the Zionists, that they have the bigger Israel. They are now threatening Jordan with this, with this big plan. Their finance minister has used in one of the conferences, he has used a map which includes Jordan. So the Israelis, the far right, they are fascists. They are not hiding their plans towards jeopardizing Jordan and endangering Jordan. This is why in Jordan, we feel it's a local priority and a responsibility in safekeeping Jordan that we also safekeep and protect the Gazans on their own land. So this is why I think the Arabs should look ahead, should think strategically that if Gaza falls, the next step for the Zionists will be their own countries.
And to that point, Dr. Tahboub, I mean, you've got Donald Trump returning to the White House. You now see even more attacks and a more brutal occurrence happening in the West Bank. We see what is happening in Jenin. We see what is happening in Nablus and so many other areas. And one needs to look at it and ask this question. I mean, how much has Trump's return really strengthened Israel's need to continue its occupation, given that Netanyahu is just going to continue to act with this impunity?
Actually, yes. I think that such an administration has given a green light to, the far Israeli government. But still, I don't think that the democratic government, during Biden's reign was any better, because all the war has occurred in that reign. But the thing is that, Donald Trump is not only a threat to Gaza or Palestine, he's a threat to the world peace, actually. And he's playing havoc with all the world. So, yes, of course, we think that the escalation, the United States and this administration in specific is responsible for the escalation. But I also think that the Zionists has been escalating, in the previous reign also of the Democratic Party. This is why the problem is also in the far Israeli government. Personally, I've never believed that the Zionists want peace with the Arab country, or they even want the two-state solution, because nothing now is being forwarded or being said about that. The Israelis, give now full support, let's say, to this far Israeli government towards escalation, toward the Judaization of, the state, and to expelling not only the people of Gaza, but also the people, of Palestinian descent living in Israel. So this has been the plan of this government all along. But of course, the presence of such a government that where there are no red lines actually when it comes to the whole world, not only in Palestine, does support the far right Israeli government. But to us, America has never been on the side of the Palestinians. It has been never even on the side of being objective, not biased. Personally, I've seen the United States as being part and parcel always of the Zionist project and always of occupying Palestine and emptying Palestinian from its people.
I've just got 1.5 minutes, Dr. Tahboub. Ismail Haniyeh was martyred, Yahya Sinwar was martyred, and of course Mohammed Deif was also martyred. So those are three key influential figures within Hamas. But what does this, from an overall perspective, speak with regards to Palestinian resistance? Because part of Israel's aim was to try and wipe out the entire Hamas leadership. They are still there. They are still actively involved in trying to rebuild Gaza. So what does this speak with regards to the resistance of Palestinians and, of course, the freedom fighting movements within that part? I've just got 1 minute, Dr. Tahboub.
It speaks a lot of optimism because we've always known in history that the absence of the leader does not mean the failure of the project. And this is what we learned. A lot of the leaders that you've mentioned have been martyred during the war, and still the resistance continued. Now we see also that all the scenes of, setting free the Israeli prisoners, which also, give us a scene of power and a scene of the ability to control the Gaza Strip. All these scenes tell us that even if the leaders are absent, the resistance will continue, and it has continued actually, and it will continue to be part of the future in Gaza and of enforcing the Palestinian right and of keeping the people of Gaza steadfast on their own land.
Dr. Dima Tahboub, shukran so much for joining us. Much appreciated. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a pleasure. Wa alaikum salam.
That's Dr. Dima Tahboub, who is from the Islamic Action Front, and she's a member of parliament in the Jordanian national legislature. After the break, we're going to be hearing a speech that was given by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres that was delivered during the African Union. Do stay tuned after this break.